We'll just give it a minute for people to come in. Looks like we've got almost coast to coast representation again, which is great to see. And some visitors from the States as well. All right, so I'm going to end that poll. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the location poll, letting us know where you're from. So it's great to see we've got everybody here from right across the country and from in the States as well. I'll just share that. And you can see that primarily from Ontario. And then, of course, our next question is, we would like to know what your occupation is and what where you work at within the industry. So there's a number of them listed here. If your career path is not listed, then just let us know in the chat.
And they should scroll down too, right?
Yes, that's right. The list is longer than what is immediately visible on the screen. So it looks like we have people from every single career path that's listed here, and then also some in the other category. So we'll look to see that comments from those in the other category in the chat. It looks like we've got a nice representation from builders and renovators as well. So that's great. So I will go ahead and share those results. All right. Thank you very much for participating in that poll. My name is Stefanie Coleman, and I work with Building Knowledge as the Marketing and Business Development Manager. And so just a little bit of Zoom housekeeping before we proceed with the webinar today. First of all, you'll see in the bottom of your screen, there should be a chat function and the Q&A function. So please, if you have any questions for Gord, or in this case, myself, who will be participating, if you have any questions for us, please use the Q&A. It's just a little bit easier to field the questions from there. That would be great. If you have any other just general comments that you want to make, observations, that sort of thing, go ahead and put that in the chat. And so that is that. We will be recording the session, or it's already being recorded, and we'll be sharing the resources with you after, probably by about tomorrow. So of course, we always want to thank Enbridge, who is a sponsor for this presentation. They're not able to join us today, but we certainly want to thank them for their support for the builders and for the industry and supporting this presentation. So I am going to stop sharing my screen, Gord, and I'm going to hand things over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you. And as we discussed, Steph, you and I are just going to chat a little bit about experiences around this indoor air quality. My hope is, and hopefully everybody can see my screen, my hope is that 95% of what I show you today, maybe 90%, is not new to you. It might just be a reminder, because frankly, I've been doing this about 35, 40 years, and IEQ, indoor air quality, has come and gone just a little bit. And we can imagine that right now it's on people's minds. I see people from across the country. All of us have gone through trials and tribulations. I feel for the folks in Alberta right now who are sort of hunkering down again. BC, of course, was at an epicenter for ages with respect to the coronavirus. But let's be really clear. That's really just a surrogate for the larger topic of indoor air quality. So I personally, my whole start to this industry as a mechanical engineer was designing and building ventilation systems, heat recovery ventilation systems back in the 80s. And a lot of work's been done with CMHC over the years, and I'll recount a bit of that experience. So all of us, many of us on this call, have had those personal experiences in a work professional life of indoor air quality. And then all of us on this call, of course, would have experience personally with indoor air quality in your own homes, your offices, your car. And I'll ask you to invoke some of those memories as we work through this session. But Stefanie, your particular experience previous to your work at Building Knowledge and in the industry, just give us a little sense of where indoor air quality fits in your experience base.
Well, so I was a self-employed renovation contractor for 15 years, and that's where I started in the construction industry in 2005, and so it was working sort of like we say, you know, the homes that we live in. It was working with homeowners to renovate their homes and to bring awareness to the quality of their indoor air as I worked through the renovations with them. And then that, you know, in the early years, it was less so as I was learning the industry. But then I took training from you actually and became a certified energy advisor. And so that expanded my knowledge, and I was doing the energy evaluations for the Eco Energy program. And that really, really expanded my understanding on the implications of the mechanicals and how they have a very significant impact on people in their homes. And then, of course, you know, I've also had personal, like you said, you know, personal experiences that where the indoor air quality has had impacts on my life as well. So, yeah.
And not to pry too much, but would you say, if I asked you the question, anybody in your own personal household with asthma, allergies, or respiratory problems, would you put your hand up to that? Is that something that you find that you would say is personally close to you?
It's the actual like asthma, no, but some seasonal allergies have been an issue. And in fact, in one home that I had temporarily lived in for rent while my house was being built, the indoor air quality of that home was really, really poor. And it certainly had, I know, a very significant impact just on my overall well-being and my child's overall well-being as well, from a health perspective. So no to the asthma, but yes to seasonal allergies and just general experience with it. Mm-hmm.
And is that a question, you know, I always pose to renovators and builders, is that a question you ask your clients? And I suspect in your world, that is something you did ask, knowing that you're going to be working in very close proximity to folks in those, I would say, very intimate relationship of a renovation. Is that a question that you might have asked in general of your clients?
Yes, exactly. So I would go through an entire scope of questions to understand what it was that their pain points were, their objectives for the renovation, because sometimes they would ask for specific things, which may not actually have been the solution to what they actually wanted. And so I would expand on those sorts of questions and certainly get into indoor air quality and comfort and other challenges that they have had and ways in which the renovation could actually improve the quality of their life.
And the reason I suggest that is that that's a question that we were always coached to ask by when we were doing work for CMHC and indoor air quality. And perhaps not surprisingly, yesterday I was at the EBA conference, not in person, but virtually, and on stage with a fellow by the name of Dr. John McEwen from the Allergy Awareness Association over in Ireland. And that was a question he posed to the audience, 200 people in the room. And they assured me that as they were asking the question, about a third of the hands went up. That is a third of the people in the room. And that's very common for me to hear that and to see that in rooms that I work with across the country. So that's why we would say this is personal. So thanks very much for that input. And we get a sense of just how important this is. I would say there's nothing more stressful to watch a child go through an asthma attack and to imagine wanting to help with that. So the quality of air you breathe. So let me just say again, the session yesterday at EBA, Energy Environmental Building Alliance, work in the United States on indoor air quality, work in Canada on indoor air quality, lots and lots of interest in this particular topic. And what I'd like to chat with you about this afternoon, Stefanie and I would like to chat with you about, is just a little background of indoor air quality in houses, kind of what we know, what we have known, where we're going from there, and then really some quick strategies to ensure that you're providing your clients with the healthiest possible indoor air. I always talk to key in a little bit on ventilation, but that's just one of the solutions that we want to chat about. And I do want to remind you that Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation specifically, and Health Canada have been the leaders in this. They did studies as early as 1988. in Waldesburg, Ontario, and various other communities. They did a very important basement study in Ottawa, Canada. They continue to be the leaders around the world. Their information, if nothing else, is entirely consistent with EPA's information and entirely consistent, not surprising that I found out, with the work that's going on in Ireland. And so studies that talked about mold, but indoor air quality in general, back in the 80s, it was a mold concern, a radon and a mold concern. And now we're on to viruses and VOCs and particulate matter and so on. So these things, the pollutants we tend to worry about tend to fluctuate or come in and out of vogue. But the overall topic of air quality, the good news is the same things that you do for radon or mold are the same things that you would do to enhance performance, say, in a pandemic environment. So lots and lots of work that's been done. And we hear these phrases, and I was actually asking EPA to validate this phrase recently, because this phrase is actually 35 years old. Indoor air could be as much as 2 to 5 times worse than outside air. And EPA is still very, very solid on this number, specifically because the Clean Air Act in the 70s improved outdoor air, as you'll see in a minute, by about 80%. And so they're very strong advocates for, now that we've cleaned up outdoor air, we should really be thinking about indoor air. And in terms of mold, it's about moisture in houses, bulk moisture. Immune system of children are impacted. These slides tend to be around the mold issue, but I think the one down, what, 5th down or 6th down, leaky houses have more mold than tight houses. In general, leaky houses have worse air quality than new tight houses that have ventilation. Let me say that again. A properly built new house meeting Ontario or national building code requirements actually have been shown to have better air quality than old houses. And that's counter to what a lot of people think. They think, well, leaky houses, lots of air coming in and out. Yes, but what's coming in with that air, the dust, the pollens, and so on from outside? And also thinking about bugs and moisture accumulation within those wall cavities. So leaky houses don't necessarily guarantee good fresh air in houses. So the bottom line is really interesting there. The young, the old, and the sick are at greatest risk. Those of us on this call, I'm still calling myself young, even though I'm in my mid-60s now, but I'm still categorizing myself in the middle generations. And I would say most of us on this call are probably healthy and safe. But let's imagine our clients, the older, those that are compromised in terms of health compromised, or the young, that we really have to watch out for, those who can't speak for themselves. So CMHC has done a lot of work. And so we just want to have a quick conversation. I'll go through this fairly quickly. Understanding, the first term to understand is indoor air quality. Let's be really clear. Your homeowners don't know what that term means. Don't use the term indoor air quality. Sorry, IEQ. Use the term indoor air quality, or the quality of the air that you and your family are breathing is really what you want to get to. And be mindful of the fact that, as I said, 30% of households have somebody in them with asthma, allergies, or respiratory problems. That's a CMHC number, a Health Canada study. And poor air quality, and none so true in the last year and a half, is costing our environment tens of billions of dollars, at least costing businesses. The fact that we have to shut down, you're going to say, well, that's because of the pandemic, of course. But had we had better air quality measures, could we have lasted longer? Could we assure, you guys all know, kids going back to school, big push to get schools properly ventilated. I used to do a lot of school ventilation work, and I could say to you about 30% of classrooms were not properly ventilated, and we need to improve that. The one on the right is really fascinating to me. Your customers are already spending lots of money on this. Oddly enough, you're not getting the calls. They don't necessarily think of you when they think of indoor air quality or the quality of the air they breathe. They're going to phone the doctor. They might phone an HVAC contractor, but even then, most HVAC contractors don't get a call. They're going online and looking for stuff, and a lot of these products really don't even do much in terms of their performance. And so people are spending a lot of money and not necessarily getting a lot of value. So the issue here is not the information I'm going to give you. The issue is the communication of this to your clients to make sure they know that you're able to help with these kinds of elements. And of course, we ask, why is that? What's changed? Why is this more important than ever before? Many of you have heard me say this before. Yes, it's partly because we're making houses tighter. Okay, I'll give you that. It's not the biggest reason, but it is one of the reasons. 2, we are using more synthetic And we started air conditioning houses in the 70s and 80s. And just remind yourself that in summer, when most of us, guys my age, were growing up, you didn't have air conditioning. You had your windows open pretty much from March through the end of October and a little bit through the winter. Now that we air condition, people aren't opening their windows. And in fact, for those of you who have listened to me before, perhaps you're tired of me saying this, but understand that not opening windows is, in fact, the reason we have problems in houses. One of the big problems. We don't properly ventilate our houses because we don't open windows. And of course, we're spending more time indoors. None so true than in the last year and a half, more and more time indoors. And on the right-hand side, let's be mindful of the change in the products we use, the carpets, the furnishings, cleaners, hygienes, more stuff in our houses than ever before. I'll highlight that by saying we have more cooking appliances, we have more hot water use, we're showering longer, more pets in our houses, and more stuff overall. Steph, I can't remind, I think I do recall. You have pets in your house, as I recall?
I do. Yes, I do. I have 2 kitty cats.
2 kitty cats.
Yeah, that's right.
And I've spent a lot of years, my good friend Gail Lawler would say to me, Gord, stop telling people to get rid of their pets. And I've learned I'm not allowed yeah. to say to you, get rid of your pets.
No, that's bad.
That's bad. But I think you will understand that pets, cats specifically, but all pets give off or add complexity to indoor air quality. And we'll highlight a few of those elements as we move through this session, because they are little fur balls. They have their own unique, they are affected by air quality, and they have their own unique inputs into the pollutant world of houses. So let's keep that in mind. I'll highlight again this idea. We put more windows in houses than ever before, bigger windows than ever before, but we open them less. And really, really clearly, windows were put into building codes as early as 1904, actually earlier than that, but formally in the United States and Canada. Windows were put into building codes for ventilation, partly for egress, emergency egress, partly for ventilation. It's been in 1941 was the first National Building Code of Canada. Under the section of health and sanitation, it talked about operable windows in 1941. It was 1904 in New York City, as you'll see here in a bit. But windows were our ventilation system, and somewhere along the mid-70s, frankly, we stopped opening windows. Why? Well, noise, dust, energy concerns, security issues. So we need to be mindful of the fact that good news is new houses do a great job of adding a second type of ventilation. You give them windows. When they don't want to use that, then they can use their mechanical ventilation system. But we also do need to understand that when we added more insulation to buildings, that meant buildings had less drying potential, which means more chance of interstitial moisture problems, and meaning we had to build houses tighter. So oddly enough, there is a link between more insulation, high efficiency houses, building codes and so on, moving more insulation, and indoor air quality, because it means less drying potential, which means we need building envelopes and closures to be tighter, and therefore we need to be more mindful of ventilation requirements. So these kinds of links. And yes, we are making them more airtight. We have less accidental ventilation, natural infiltration. And I think most of us want to understand we don't really want that uncontrolled leakage, but we were getting some of that as we moved along. And oddly enough, we've made houses tighter, and then we've put in more and more exhaust appliances. And so when we turn on large range hoods, dryers, and so on, we are indeed not necessarily moving the amount of air that we thought we were. So things like makeup air are important to make sure we're getting rid of the pollutants at their source, and houses going under negative pressure. Certainly in older houses, if I put in a large kitchen range hood, I have an old furnace or boiler with natural draft. Could it be backdrafting into the house? Do I have to think about makeup air? So renovators, remodelers on this call, Steph, I'm going to ask you, kitchen renovations, everybody putting in a range hood?
Oftentimes nice big ones, which create a little bit of stress.
Yes.
Yes, and absolutely.
It would be an awkward conversation, I can imagine, to link a really beautiful kitchen remodel to a mechanical conversation. That is, hey, not only do I have to do something in your kitchen, but I got to go down and look in the basement and see what you're doing for heating and cooling. Did you find yourself doing pressure testing on houses once you became an energy advisor to make sure there was combustion safety?
Yes, absolutely. So, putting the blower door on and putting on all the exhaust devices to get a sense of kind of where they stood with depressurization, and explaining it to them, walking the client through, okay, so here's what's happening. We've got a negative pressure, and then, here's your hot water tank. Maybe we need to look at upgrading it because it's a rental unit, right? Or maybe we need makeup air. So it's basically, taking the concepts and trying to cull it down to as clear as possible. And what I found was that clients actually responded very positively to that. And they often understood what I was attempting to try to explain to them.
So isn't that odd? I'll just highlight that again. Those on the call that are kitchen renovations and so on, boy, you are going to have to think about large exhaust fan. I wonder what's going to happen to that natural draft appliance, which had no understanding that we were going to put in a range hood. So pretty powerful. And then I always like to turn the conversation, if I was in a classroom with folks, I always like to ask this question: how would you describe good indoor air? What would it feel like? And the words we often get, well, I'd want it to be fresh and I'd like it to be clean. Fair enough. And most people would say, as clean as a clean outdoor air, like a nice fall or spring day when the air is really good. Then the angst does come in. Well, is the outdoor air actually good? And I'll remind you, and I'll prove it to you here in a second. Outdoor air is better than indoor air. I can say it to you this way: where did the air that's currently in your home come from? Well, of course, it came from outdoors originally. Then you cooked in it, showered in it, lived in it, played in it, home office in it, schooled in it. In today's world, you actually made the air worse. You are the single biggest pollutant in the house. Well, you and your cat, Steph, sorry, you and the little guys. But you are the pollutant in your houses, and we have to think about that air change rate. The other thing that is quite useful to understand is your nose is a wonderful scientific instrument. Your nose is actually more sensitive than most of the equipment that you can buy, except your nose is attached to a really lazy brain. So you have seen the ads about being nose blind, that people tend to lose track of the smells in houses, because when you go home, you go, oh, that's the same smell, and your brain goes, same smell, don't worry about it. What's powerful is if you've been away for a few days and now you come home, maybe you've been at the cottage and you came home, take a deep whiff. The house has been closed up, you've been away, and the house actually smells a little stuffy, a little stale. And you think, oh, that's just because the house has been closed up. And actually, no, that's the way the house smells all the time. In fact, it normally smells worse because you are normally there. The major polluter has been away. The house has been on a bit of a holiday. So your nose is great, except it gets conditioned. That's why your nose is so useful to other clients. Now, I know, Steph, it wouldn't be practical to walk into somebody's house and say, boy, it stinks in here. But I think you'd agree, you have to help people. If I don't know if you've had the experience, I'm sure you did, basement renovations, and one of the things that you would be looking for would be that musty odor in basements, I presume.
Definitely the musty odor in basements, just to see kind of what sort of conditions we're dealing with from a moisture management perspective and water management perspective. But typically what I would do is I wouldn't just come straight out and say that the place smelled unattractive. I would pose the question, oh, so tell me more about,
Lovely.
Yes, that's right. And, it's funny, you were talking about your being nose blind. It's kind of like the boiled frog, you don't realize what you don't know. And so you just become accustomed to this. And I found that in so many ways, not only just in indoor air quality, but also in comfort as well.
And also it goes to this: you go into houses and you'll smell lavender fresh or winter green, and you realize, oh, these people have been masking odors. I wonder what's that about. And we do need to ask that. Tell me, why is it? Do you feel the need to burn that candle or have that plug in? Well, just the house is stuffy and stale all the time. Yeah. That's a really good clue that we should be helping them with better information, because those chemicals that are coming out of those, let's call it odorizers, aren't necessarily healthy for us. We know they have phthalates and various other things in them. That's a whole other bit of chemistry that we'd have to worry about. But I'll move down the line and I'd say, people always say, well, I want to make sure it has the fewest possible pollutants. Then people say, well, I wonder, how many pollutants are in the air, and we're starting to see more and more interest in measurement. And back in the early days of indoor air quality, measurement tools were really, really expensive. In fact, my laser particle counter just bit the dust. And I remember spending $4,800 on it 30 years ago. You can imagine what that is. Well, now it's bit the dust. I'm looking at buying a new one. They're still darn expensive, but less than $4,800. So in the past, it wasn't possible, or at least practical, I would say, would be the to measure. But you're going to see some interesting stuff on that measurement side. The last line I'll just indicate to you, very often indoor air quality complaints are actually temperature and humidity complaints. That is, their body doesn't necessarily recognize what's going on, so they call it stuffy air, but it turns out it was actually a humidity problem or a temperature problem. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But here's the slide I wanted to show you. I hinted to you that outdoor air has gotten better. This is all clearly the basis of the Clean Air Act that was instituted in the United States and in Canada in the mid-70s. And notice the difference, that they've reduced the number of smog days by about 80% in every major center, including Canada, since the mid-70s. And when we talk about outside air, there's two things we're worried about. One is ozone. Ozone, for those who are need to remind it of grade 11 chemistry class. Ozone is O3. It's an an oxygen atom, oxygen molecule that has an extra oxygen atom to it, makes it O3. It's highly reactive. It quickly wants to become O2. And the free ozone molecule, in fact, now wants to collect or at least combine with something else. It oxidizes things. And you would go, oxidizes, that sounds like rust. Right. Ozone is a corrosive. It actually damages lung tissues because it's trying to neutralize itself. So ozone is a bit of a danger. The good news is it's outside. If it's a smog day, you should stay indoors. The ozone, once it comes indoors, dissipates really quickly, especially if it's coming through, say, a ventilation system, through a filter, through the heating system. The extra oxygen atom just kind of disappears. We don't need to worry about it as much when we're indoors. That's why they say on smog days, stay indoors. And you go, well, I thought you said indoor air wasn't as good. Ozone is bad enough that if it's a bad ozone day, those with respiratory problems should stay inside, but they should have really good filtration systems and so on. The other one, and the folks in BC will get this one, as will Northern Ontario, as will Alberta, the fine dust particles. That, of course, the last few summers, the wood smoke particulates, fine dust particles, we're very worried about those. They get deep into the lungs. And unfortunately, Steph, that's kind of the issue with cats. The dander that comes from cats is really pretty fine, and it gets deep into the lungs. So that's why people have cat allergies specifically, because those particles make their way so deep into the bronchial system and ultimately down in the lungs. So we have to be a little careful about fine dust off of certain types of pets and so on. So that's what we worry about in outdoor air. But in general, in indoor air, a long list here of things, and I'll just give you the three categories. There's the building-related products, the off-gassing from paints and building materials. These are all the things that we as a building industry could be faulted for. Then on the right-hand side, there are people-related issues. So things like cleaners, personal hygiene products, furniture, toys, and so on. And then, of course, there's some that are both related to people and the building, things like pests and pesticides, perhaps, or maybe garage pollutants. The question I always get asked is, so which one's worse? And here's what we kind of know. I would say there's pretty good evidence. The first 9 to 18 months, the indoor air quality is dominated by the products we use to build that house, 9 to 18 months. After that, those have started to mitigate a little bit. They're still there, but it's the occupant-related items that tend to dominate. That is, they brought in new furniture. They brought in new cleaning products. They started to be active in their house, home office, and so on. So their own pollutants tend to dominate. Of course, they want to imagine if there's an air quality problem, it's something that was done in the house. So we have to be mindful and help them with those kinds of decisions. So we're looking at both building-related and people-related products that we need to be conscious of, if you will. There's a few products or let's say pollutants that we want to be really mindful of. First one is mold. Some spell it M-O-U. This is M-O-L-D. Radon, you guys will know, is in building code is a hot topic these days. The U.S. has kind of been there, done that on radon. We're still feeling our way with it. Lead and asbestos, we would agree in new housing, no longer an issue. Steph, I don't know, did you run into lead or asbestos on your remodel projects?
We did testing on different projects of homes of that era, and luckily for us, we didn't have to do any sort of major abatement for lead or asbestos in any of the projects that we had worked on. But of course, other people in the industry have had to do that, and it's been quite extensive, especially with the vermiculite insulation and other products, paints, and that sort of thing. So.
And I like the way you said it. Mm-hmm. Let's just go ahead and test. Let's be pros. Yeah. Let's not deny. Let's not pretend it's not there. The testing's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Yeah. A few $100 and you can determine whether the material has asbestos or lead in it. Carbon monoxide, again, we would say in new housing, kind of been there, done that. We've solved that with 1990 with direct vent sealed combustion equipment, at least most parts of the country. Some parts of the country are still allowing, I would say, B-vented or chimney-vented appliances. Wood heating can be a bit of an issue in some markets, so we have to be mindful of carbon monoxide. And then material off-gassing, in our world, that would be VOCs, volatile organic compounds. That's the off-gassing, sort of ubiquitous off-gassing from various bits and pieces of building materials. And then I have put on the list, sorry, Steph, I've put back on the list the pets, the plants, and the pests. I don't need to overplay that one, but we do need to understand that even indoor plants can give off as many pollutants. Sometimes you hear people say, oh, the plants will clean the air. Well, yes, they are providing oxygen, a small amount, but the dirt, the soils, the microorganisms can indeed cause issues, and pests themselves, even the pests themselves are the pesticides we use to get rid of them. So if we're going to have pets, that's fine. We just need to have them in the conversation of where they fit on the indoor air quality scale. And I did want to give a little bit of a highlight as to what is practical to measure these days. CO2, carbon dioxide. This is what they measure in schools. It's a good indication of people. CO2 itself is not really a pollutant, unless you get to really high levels. But CO2 is relatively easy to measure, and it's a good indication. If you have high CO2 levels, you don't have enough ventilation for the people. Let me put it a different way. I did a lot of school classroom work. I would go in and use a CO2 monitor. If the CO2 monitor, the outdoor level is around 400, 500, depending on where you are. If I went into a classroom and measured 800, I would pretty much know that when I took a whiff of the air, I'd go, yeah, it doesn't smell too bad in here. If I walked into a classroom and went, wow, does it ever smell in here? That's really stuffy. Inevitably, the CO2 monitor would say over 1,000 parts per million, maybe 1,200, 1,400. I measured some as high as 25 to 100 to 3,000. Now, let's be clear. People live in submarines. Healthy armed forces folks live in submarines at 8 to 10,000 parts per million, and they're not overly affected by it. So it itself is not the pollutant. What it is indicating, it's a measurement tool that would say to you, we don't have enough ventilation for the people. And what you're starting to see is practical CO2 sensors, and you could imagine where you might use them. You might use them in an office. You might use them in your bedroom to get a sense of if your bedroom is properly ventilated. I'll come back to that in a second. Certainly radon. I think we all need to get our heads around in existing housing. If you're doing basement remodels or you see people sleeping in basements, you should be thinking about radon testing. We as an industry should be encouraging radon testing, certainly in the remodel world. Even in new housing, you're going to start to see more and more interest in this across the country. Certainly temperature and relative humidity, you want to be able to measure. CO is a given. Every HVAC contractor, and you don't, as a builder, you don't necessarily need a CO detector, but every mechanical contractor should have one. If there are combustion appliances in a house, let's be checking for CO levels. Volatile organic compounds, this used to be totally impractical. It used to be thousands of dollars to test for VOCs in houses. There are now some simple monitors that take what we would call TVOCs, total volatiles. You're not going to be able to say whether it's formaldehyde or other aldehydes, but overall, what are the VOC levels? And then this PM 2.5, particulate matter smaller than 2.5 microns. This one's got to be on your list of things to be aware of. PM 2.5, small particles. These are particles that are small enough to get through your nose, through your bronchial system, deep into your lungs. This is where the asthmatics, allergists, so on are really, really interested in. And again, there are now more available to you measurement tools that could make that happen. And it's that 2.5 in outdoor air that we're most interested in. It's, you know, smoke from fires and wood smoke, vehicle exhaust, some pets, and cat danders getting down into that range. So that's why we're a little more worried about those, because they can get deeper into the system. But even cooking and some cleaning products, that particulate matter of 2.5. And there you will see some measurement tools that are commonly sold online. My big issue with all of these devices, these are various brand names, my problem with these devices is all they do is tell you there's a problem. They don't tell you what to do, nor do they have the capability to actually do anything. And from a builder's perspective, I've already gotten these phone calls. Builder builds a great house, homeowner moves in, buys themselves one of these monitors. The one on the left is familiar to me, for example. I'll get a call from the homeowner or the builder saying, yeah, my customer says the thing's flashing orange. What do we do about it? Well, good question. What exactly is it telling you? Let's go to the report. And the good news is many of these monitors are now transitioning away from an absolute measure, that is exactly what the level is, and looking for more what I'll call activities or events. They'll take a baseline, how is it normally, and then if it sees a spike, then it'll alarm. And that tends to be more useful. That's kind of where you'd like to go. This is my normal background. Everybody seems fine. But if I see a spike, maybe I was cooking and I didn't turn on the range hood, oh, that's a good lesson. I should turn the range hood on when I'm cooking, because otherwise the air quality sensor goes off. What you're going to see, I'm excited to show you actually in a little bit, is some manufacturers are now coming to the table that actually have the ability to do something about some of these indicators as opposed to just buying some sensors. So that's useful. What I want to get to is really quickly, so we have lots of time for a discussion and questions, is I'd just like to help you understand how to prioritize indoor air quality pollutants. That is, you can't build a house with zero pollutants. You just can't. Existing houses, all of them have pollutants. The question is, how much is too much? When should I worry about this? And the first thing to understand is proximity to occupants. That would say to you, which room in the house, Steph, I'll ask you, in your household, which room in the house would be the most important if we're worried about in this category?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I would think.
Go ahead.
Well, I would think it'd be the room that you spend the most time in.
Which would be?
Well, so for me, there is, that would be my bedroom.
Awesome.
And then second to that would be like the kitchen. So.
Well, I thought you'd be more worried about Alex's bedroom, but okay, you're not worried about your kid. That's fine. I was kind of setting you up there for being the perfect mom, you know?
But man, I failed. I failed again.
That's right. But this is what I would caution everybody on this call, is to understand that we spend most of our time in bedrooms, or at least not most of the time, but we spend a huge chunk of time in our bedrooms. So the example here is this: the kitchen range, it's important, but it's not as important as what's going on, say, what's the bedding of, what's the bed made out of, the child's bedroom, or what's in the carpet in the child's bedroom. So these are the kinds of things that we would say is, let's look at the people who are most sensitive. Let's think about and imagine an oasis, making that particular area clean. So you start to answer questions like, so what shouldn't be on the floor of a child's bedroom? Well, it shouldn't be carpeted. What shouldn't the bed be made out of? Well, it probably shouldn't be particle board. Where should the stuffed toys be? Well, actually, they should be stored outside the bedroom and only bring in 1 or 2 at night. It's remarkable to me how many times that's actually helped clients. Just recently, a young friend of ours, that's what I said, just pick one area, just pick one tonight. You can keep the other stuffies in the closet, but one stuffy per night, and she chooses one. And that actually improved how she felt over the course of the night. So 1 is proximity to occupants. 2 is the toxicity of pollutants. Think about lead, think about asbestos. Geez, we clearly don't want those close to people. So how noxious, how toxic is the item? That's where the range is of interest, because especially a gas range, thinking about the products of combustion, especially if it's not cleaned correctly, and the aerosols and the oils that are coming off your cooking. As much as they may smell great, they may not be great for you. So those kinds of high intensity pollutants, you'd say, yeah, I really want to work on that kitchen range, for example. Next on the list is the amount of area. If I have broadloom carpet, wall-to-wall carpet throughout the house, that's a huge surface area. So I'd want to think about that. And then lastly, proximity to heat and moisture. We know that high heat, high moisture actually exacerbates off-gassing. So things that are near the furnace supply vents, for example, that ends up being a bit of an issue. And so lots of examples around that, but those are the priorities. And here's the slide, hopefully it switches. There's the slide that I'm most interested in. This is the one that's been most helpful to me. Many of you on this call, remember I said you probably heard a lot of this before. I just want to remind you, this is the order of priority. First, it's remove the pollutants. Here's what I get into trouble, Steph. I try to write a letter to my homeowners. First, I said to them, get rid of the cats, and you would have said, no way. And then I would say, find another loving home for your cats, and you would say, no. So could I say to you, well, Alex, Alex is perhaps allergic to the cats. The cat shouldn't be in the bedroom of your child. Is that okay? If you'd say,
absolutely, yes.
Fair enough. I've even had some clients who would say, no, wait, the cat's going to sleep with the kids. I'm like, okay. But the first strategy is remove. In a builder's world, that means stop using products that smell or stink. Start using, and you've all switched to low VOC paints and low VOC cleaners. But now let's think about, and sealants. Let's think about low VOC flooring materials, low VOC finishing materials overall, maybe even wood products, cabinets, and so on. First is remove. The second, that which you can't remove, you seal or isolate, you source control. A great example of that is people want attached garages for security reasons, for comfort reasons. Well, we know the garages are full of pollutants. Our job is to make sure the house is really tight between the house and the garage. That's why you build tight houses. And in fact, there's a simple test you can make. I do it all the time in Terrion investigations. I take a pressure tap across the house to the garage, do my depressurization test, and I can tell you how much leakage there is from the garage to the house. Pretty simple measurement. Any energy advisor can do that for you. House to garage connection. Seal or isolate. If you can't if you can't get rid of, say, particle boards, could I seal the edges of the particle boards? And the answer, sure. I could use sealed edge cabinetry to reduce the amount of pollutants in the house. So the second strategy is seal. That's the strategy we'd use for a kid's bedroom, for example. Third on the list is ventilate. We'll talk about that more. And fourth on the list is filtration. And that's not to discount the value of filtration. I'm not saying it's not valuable. I am saying to you it's fourth on that priority. You will not filter your way out of a cat allergy. Okay, but if you're going to keep the cats, then filtration becomes more important. What's more important? Actually, ventilation. If you're going to keep the cat, one, the cat stays out of vulnerable areas. Two, you properly ventilate both the places where the cat is and the rooms that the cat isn't. And lastly, you would think about filtration to get better filtration of the room of the person who's most sensitive, or where the cat spends most of their time. So you get to see the idea of this order of priority is hopefully helpful to you. Remove, seal, ventilate, filter. It'll be on the test. Do we have a test? No, we don't have a test, but remove,
I can make one.
I don't know. Remove, seal, ventilate, filter. And a little example of that is radon. Radon control, we know it's there. We actually don't know if it's there. We know it's there in Canada. We know it's there in Port Hope, but you should be measuring. But if you do find radon, what do? Well, you can't move the house. What do? The U.S. has had really good experience with this. One, you seal. You seal the basement. You seal the cracks. That's become a building code requirement, right? And then you ventilate. And there's a really good evidence. If you make a really airtight house and then you ventilate it properly, even if you do have radon, you don't have radon concentrations in houses. We just got off a call, actually. Grace I've forgotten where Grace is from, but she was on the CSA committee, and that's terrible of me. just slipped my mind. They're doing studies on this all the time, and she was showing how properly ventilated houses have lower levels of radon concentration. So radon can't remove, so I do a seal and isolate strategy, especially if people are sleeping in bedrooms. So properly ventilate that house, perimeter drainage, and so on. It's a great example of that. The next one on the list is moisture. And I always like to ask, is moisture good or bad? And the answer is yes. And this slide is from 1976, but it was recently validated by ASHRAE, saying it's called the Sterling chart. We used it decades ago, and now it's entirely appropriate for the COVID conversation, because look at the second column down, the viruses. Viruses don't propagate well between 40 and 60% RH. That is a validation that that 40 to 60% RH is still a really, really useful number for you and I to make sure that we keep our houses at that level. Now, many of you are going to say 40% in Ottawa in the wintertime, that's going to be condensation on windows. Sure. But I want to keep as close to 40 as I can. Maybe it's 35 on the coldest of days. In Winnipeg, you're going to say, that's more like 30. Although I would say to you, in the vein of high performance houses that we've talked about in another session, what if we used triple glazed windows so that our windows are warmer, that can support higher levels of humidity? In fact, the number one reason why you should sell triple glazed windows is not for energy efficiency, it's for health of occupants, so that you can maintain a healthy range of 40%. The 60% is interesting. Alberta's not going to have a problem with this, but Vancouver is. Your humid, rainy seasons. Ontario has a problem with this. The Maritimes has a problem with this. Over 60% in basements and many parts of houses. And I'm going to ask you to think about ways to bring humidity levels down in houses. I want to maintain that 40 to 60. In fact, I'll go slightly differently. I will say 35 to 45 winter, 50 to 55 summer. That's where you'd like to be. 35, can I say it again? 35, 45 winter, 50, 55 in the summer is kind of where you'd like to be. Stay away from the edges, especially in the winter side. So humidity control ends up being a new conversation for you. Many of you are already doing a good job on this. I would just ask you, you've been adding moisture for years to buildings with humidifiers. No problem with that, as long as we're not over that level of condensation. But what has been your strategy to remove moisture in the summer? Many of you would say, well, I tell people to run a dehumidifier. Absolutely. Every homeowner's manuals, Stefanie, you've actually written some of these homeowners manuals. Tell me about the recommendation for humidity control in basements.
Well, what we know is in new homes, particularly, there is a profound amount of water in concrete and in construction materials, and it takes several years to pull that out. And so our recommendation always is that number one, you should be measuring to know what your humidity levels are, but then run a dehumidifier in order to maintain that optimal level, just as Gord had described.
Right, and that means either a portable, which only have a 3-year lifespan, or I'm going to show you some technologies that would say, some builders on this call are going to go, I need to up my game. Many would say, well, I use my air conditioner to dehumidify, and that's fine, as long as your air conditioner is set up correctly, one, measure. And two, as long as you're running your air conditioner enough and you go, in April, not running my AC much, my basement's too humid, still need a dehumidifier. So absolutely, that's a strategy. And it's really about maintaining that balance point. People generate moisture, the house generates moisture, but I need to find that balance point. As I said to you, 50 plus or minus 5 in summer, 35 to 45 plus or minus 5. I'm showing slightly different range. I guess I should have showed this slide first before I gave you those numbers, but I'm still okay with these numbers, that 35 plus or minus 5. I'm using basically the really cold climates to say, I know some of you would say 40 is too high, but get to triple glazed and it'll help you manage moisture in houses. Remember, don't sell triple glazed windows because they're energy efficient. They are, but sell them because the child's asthma is going to get better, if you will. You're not allowed to say that, but it'll improve the overall health of the people living in the building.
It would also positively impact the service department too. We get a lot of builders. Almost every single builder I talk to talks about how they get callbacks from customers saying that they have leaky windows, when in fact it's just condensation buildup. So yeah. So it can be beneficial for the warranty department as well.
Right. I'm showing you a slide, in an hour and a half session, we can't do too much on psychometrics. What we'd love to do, Enbridge sponsored a day-long moisture session not too long ago. Stefanie, you and I did down in Stony Creek. And we talked about psychometrics, and I just want to give you an example of psychometrics. Psychometrics is the physics of how warm, moist air works. It's actually a pretty simple concept looking in a very complicated looking chart. Look along the bottom axis, you'll notice that's the temperature. That's the air temperature that you'd measure with a thermometer, for example. The big curvy lines are the relative humidity. The relative humidity line that I'm showing you, the edge of the curve, is the 100% line, also known as the dew point line. And I just wanted to show you, if you took air at 25 degrees, this is showing in Fahrenheit, 25 degrees Fahrenheit and 100%, which would mean it's snowing outside, and I bring that air into the house and warm it up to 70 degrees, what's its new relative humidity? And the reason I'm showing this is because of the tough concept of relative humidity. Relative humidity is exactly that. It's the amount of moisture in the air compared to how much the air could hold at any given temperature. And it turns out air at 25 degrees Fahrenheit can't hold much moisture. It only, at 100%, when I bring that air in, 70-degree air can actually hold 80% more moisture than 25-degree Fahrenheit air. And this tool, or this understanding of relative humidity, is really useful to everybody on this call. And I would encourage you to learn more about psychometrics or sign up for a longer course. We'd be happy to put that on for you to help you understand how psychometrics work. But really, and Steph, you mentioned it, is let's just be ready to measure. Measuring relative humidity is actually not that easy to do. We have a lot of different devices out there. These devices are all in the same humidor, which is actually at 40% relative humidity. How do we know that? We actually have a true gauge measuring this. This was Jim White from CMHC, who loved to bring this box to training sessions. He'd have everybody dump their hygrometer into it and show them just how difficult it is to measure, to find accurate measurements. And you'll notice they go from bottom right to anywhere from 21% all the way up to 50%. Is it even higher? 51.5%. So you're going to have to buy yourself a good thermal hygrometer, spend about $100 to $200 on a good thermal hygrometer for your service department to walk into houses. They all take a few minutes to acclimatize, and say to your client, this is what I'm measuring. So get yourself a good hygrometer. You might even have to help them calibrate. I do this all the time. I've often taken, I used to carry with me a bucket of table salt, or at least a box of table salt. When a homeowner would say to me, I've been using this hygrometer for 20 years, it's accurate. Fair enough, let's put it in, and here's what you do. Take a half a cup of table salt, quarter cup of water, mix it in the cup for about a minute. I used to take the plastic bag with me. I'd take their hygrometer, I'd put it in the bag. I would seal it up with my hygrometer as well. And what you find is, if it's properly calibrated, it'll get to 75% in 8 to 12 hours. Now you're going to say 8 to 12 hours. Well, obviously, if it gets there sooner, that's great. And so I was able to show clients whether their hygrometer was valid or not. So I'm going to ask you to calibrate your hygrometer if you've got one now. Pretty simple to do. You'll get a copy of the slides, you can do it. So the point of those 3 slides was moisture is a bigger deal. Why? Because sensible loads, temperature loads, are on the way down. We're putting in better windows, better walls, better ceilings. But our latent loads, moisture loads, are on the way up. More time indoors, which means more perspiration, respirations, cleaning, showers, and so on. More showers, more plumbing, more moisture in our houses than before. We shower once or twice a day now, we didn't used to. And we have more consistent ventilation throughout summer months. Humidity is a bigger issue than ever before. What you're seeing on the right-hand side is a whole house dehumidifier. And you're going to have to get used to imagining, especially in large custom houses, putting in whole house dehumidifiers. In fact, there are 4 strategies to manage moisture. 1, properly sized air conditioning on the top left, properly sized air conditioning with what's called a humidity control that actually allows the air conditioner to run at lower speeds to get better dehumidification. 2, switch your HRVs to ERVs. ERVs are not dehumidifiers, but they help manage moisture specifically in summer. 3, either portable dehumidifiers or whole house dehumidifiers. The reason I like whole house is because they have much higher capacity at much lower power consumption. You would duct them in They're more reliable. They last much longer. These are like 20-year appliances or 15-year appliances as opposed to the, the portable ones that are 3 years. And so give your clients an opportunity. They're quiet, or you don't have to worry about dumping it. So start thinking about whole house dehumidification. So that's moisture. I don't have too many more slides, Steph, before, well, I guess I have a few more, but I just want to highlight, most of us already know ventilation. I'll go fairly quickly, talk a little bit on filtration, and then you and I are going to want to talk about what's practical and so on. So I said to you, we've known about ventilation a long time. I love showing this slide. This is a quote from Ben Franklin. I am certain that no air is as unwholesome as air in a closed room that's often breathed and not changed. And Ben was an expert, amongst all other things, an expert in ventilation. He was called to public buildings, churches, schools, hospitals, and so on, to properly calibrate their ventilation system. And back then they used windows. And he would say to them, in this church, I need this window open 3 inches and that window open 6 inches in order to create proper ventilation while the congregation is here. We've known about ventilation a long time. This was, I mentioned to you, the building code in New York changed in 1904, not for energy efficiency, not for combustion safety, but for health of occupants. And Dr. Biggs was the eminent authority on tuberculosis. He was the guy who got the sewer systems corrected so they didn't have cholera and diphtheria and typhoid and typhus. And they found people were still dying, but now they were dying of tuberculosis. And he realized it was due to a lack of proper air. And so they changed the New York building code to require, and here's the drawing, this is an old brownstone building that's being refurbished, but look at the, I would say, the jigsaw puzzle nature of the building. And the reason they were designed that way was to make sure that there was windows on 2 different orientations. Every suite in New York City, go look at the architecture, had to be designed such that there was windows on 2 different orientations to create a natural draft effect. Isn't that kind of interesting? And of course, we've had it in our building code since 41, and now people said, I want to open those windows, so we have to give them mechanical ventilation. And so I'm going to say to you, the idea here is to build tight, and give people the capacity for continuous mechanical ventilation. Now, the issue is, it's a done deal. It's already code. It's been a code requirement since 1995. The only issue I have with this is I still hear builders and mechanical contractors say, well, just turn it off in the summer. You don't want it running in the summer. No, you want this running whenever people are breathing. Oh, my partner Mark likes to say it this way. Online, raise your hand if you're a continuous breather. Anybody? Continuous breather? Yes. So you need ventilation whenever you're breathing. Whenever somebody's at home, and I want everybody on this call to look around in your house, in your office, is there a fan running right now? Is the window open, or is there a fan running that's bringing in fresh air and taking out stale air? If not, Stefanie and I are going to come and smell your house. Yeah, we're not going to, but we're going to use our noses, and we're going to say, tell me about this. You know, what was the phrase you used, Stefanie? Tell me about, yeah. You know,
that's right.
Why am I smelling? Yeah, tell me more. Why am I smelling this? So that's what I'll get to. And what you could be really comfortable with is to understand, I'm showing national building code. I know there's people from Ontario here and that have their own building code, so does BC, but they're all very close to this. Here's what's powerful to understand. In a 3-bedroom house, you can go ahead and make a house as tight as you want. And as long as you put in somewhere between, I'll say 47 and 68 in a 3-bedroom house, you can be assured you have enough mechanical ventilation. Now, do some people need more? Well, it turns out Stefanie has 3-bedroom house, Steph?
4.
4-bedroom house.
Yeah.
But she has 2 people and 2 cats. And cats need more fresh air than humans. I don't know if you know this. Cats need about double, almost triple the amount of fresh air as humans. So Stefanie might want a little more fresh air in her house because she has cats. Normally, we're sizing for people. We size at 15 cubic feet per minute per person. 3-bedroom house, likely to have 4 people in it. 4 times 15 equals 60. See the chart? 60 CFM is what you're targeting for a 4-person house. A 2-person house with 2 pets, oh, maybe we want a little more ventilation than that. So this is a minimum, but you can be really confident in this number. We've known about this number for a long time. We know it works in Canadian houses, so that's powerful. In addition to that whole house ventilation, yes, we would like ventilation from kitchens and bathrooms. Really important that we understand a kitchen range vented to the outdoors. And you know, I got to tell you, in the early days, I would have said do a recirc range hood, put in an HRV vent. Now I would say do a good kitchen range. Cooking styles have changed. Cooking types have changed. We need to vent those products outside. It's got to be quiet. We don't need 1,000 CFM of air, couple hundred, 300 CFM of air. You'll notice the HVI Home Ventilating Institute has given a really nice guideline of CFM per foot, lineal foot of range. So in that range of 200 to 400 CFM is normally good enough. You do need to understand the bottom line there is if you're using a gas range, there is a prescriptive requirement for air. This isn't for air quality. This is for temperature rise. That bottom amount of 100 CFM per 10,000 BTUs is to ensure that not too much heat goes up, or at least the temperature in the heat's still going to go up. The temperature in the duct from the vent isn't too hot. So that's why gas ranges need more ventilation. It's a temperature rise issue that we need to worry about. And so you have two types of ventilation. On the left-hand side, you have source control. On the right-hand side, you have continuous capacity. So I need a small amount, 60 CFM running all the time. Then I need some source control in the bathrooms and in the kitchen. And that range hood's an important component. And then I said to you, I was kind of excited. Brown's just announced and just brought out a new level of sensor. Remember I said those other sensors that can't really do anything? These sensors can actually do something. On the left-hand side, you'll see it's a little air quality sensor you plug into a room. It will connect itself, I'll show you in a second, connect itself, say, to your range hood, your bath fan, your HRV or ERV, and make decisions on what should run. In the middle of the picture, you'll see everybody's got an app these days, and sure enough, you can look at the air quality in your room. And I've had this as a demo installed in my house for the last 6 months. It's kind of cool to see what happens. And of course, I've been experimenting, turn the HRV off, ERV off, see what happens in the master bedroom. And sure enough, the CO2 levels rise. CO2 is not the pollutant, but it's a good surrogate to say, I need more fresh air in my bedroom. So I turn the ERV back on. So just kind of cool. I think I can get this to play. It's showing a sensor in the room that then's going to turn on the bathroom fan as an example, or it's going to connect to the HRV or ERV and tell it to run more often. So this new sensor technology is just coming. Other manufacturers are doing the same. I'll mention Panasonic has something very similar, but at least now we have companies who have the capacity to do something about this are able to do this. And would it someday connect to a humidifier and a dehumidifier? And the answer would be, of course. If the humidity level is too low, humidity level is too high, let's make those decisions. So kind of cool. Hopefully you'd agree. Interesting element. I get asked, and I'll say it really quickly, ERV or HRV? And the answer is, in almost all cases, it's ERV. If you're doing any amount of air conditioning, you do ERV. And you're going to say, I hear they don't work. You're right. They didn't. In 1984, I probably tested the first one in a residential system. It blew itself up. We never recommended ERVs in the 80s or the 90s. The good news is the best manufacturers now have ERV technology that works in cold climates. Make sure you choose one that's appropriate for cold climates. There are some that are meant for the United States, do not have cold weather rating. You're going to want one that's rated down to -25°C. But if it's rated as an ERV, you can have reliance on that product, and ERVs do a little better job of managing moisture both summer and winter. So I'll just go to filtration quickly, and I'll just say this. Remember, it's fourth on the list of things to do, but it's still a good thing to do. And what you want to get to is at least MERV 10. Who the heck is MERV? Some guy who rates filters? No. Minimum efficiency reporting value. And it takes a whole series of pollutant sizes. It shows you the efficiency. Let me show you the busy chart. It'll show you the MERV rating based on size of particulates. And you'll notice that MERV 1 to 4 filter only takes out, 20% of small particles and a different percentage of larger particles. But what you'd like to get to, the sweet spot, is in that 8 to 12, maybe as high as 13 MERV rating. There are some filters 12 to 14 that I feel good about. The only issue is, are they going to affect the performance of my air handler? That is, what is the resistance or the pressure drop? Here's what I'd have you do. Just measure it. Before your mechanical contractor says you can't use that, just get them to get a magnehelic gauge or a pressure gauge, or get your energy rated to take a pressure reading across. I do this all the time, and it's fascinating to me. Most of the filters I measure are just fine. They're well within the capabilities. And yet homeowners have been told, no, that's affecting your furnace, that's affecting your air conditioner, that's what's causing your problem with the room being too hot upstairs. I check it, and it's actually fine. So sometimes they're not, or sometimes they're dirty. So have the ability to measure. That's a gauge that costs about $200 for your mechanical contractor. Builders shouldn't have to have it. Mechanicals should have it. Go and measure the pressure drop. Takes all of 20 seconds to measure, and then you can determine whether the filter's good or bad. But California now has MERV requirements in new houses for new equipment. You're not going to see it necessarily in Canada just yet, but I'm going to say to you, at least MERV 8 to 10, and as much as 12 to 14, as long as you've checked the pressure drop across that house. And then I'm always interested, I want to get your feedback. There's a program in the United States called Indoor Air Plus. It's an Energy Star, sorry, it's a complementary program to Energy Star, EPA runs. If you're an Energy Star builder and you do this checklist, there's a one-page checklist, you would also qualify for EPA Indoor Air Plus label. I happen to have one, did one on my house. We're trying to bring it to Canada. We'd like to get some feedback as to others, whether they'd like to see it here, or do we develop something on our own? And our quality has shown interest in developing a indoor air quality label. But notice the elements it talks about: moisture control, heating, cooling, ventilation, combustion safety, proper commissioning of a building, radon control, pest barriers, and healthy building materials. Pretty simple checklist is where we'd like to get to. And I think I'll just go to, well, I'll leave this slide up. And Steph, maybe while we have that slide up, let's chat about this a little bit of the things that I talked about: remove, isolate, ventilation and filtration. Give me some examples that you would have seen that were possible in, say, some of the remodel projects that you were working on that might qualify in some of those categories.
So I'm just thinking about one that I did not that long ago. And so what we had was it's an older home, like, so 1970s, 1980s, leaky, double pane windows, but they just weren't, they would actually get frost on them in the wintertime. A little bit of moisture intrusion into the basement. So these sorts of issues. And so this one kind of had all of the above, including a natural aspirating hot water tank and furnace. No, the furnace, I think, had been upgraded. So it kind of had all of the above. So it was a matter of tackling the windows, tackling the insulation and the air leakage. But the indoor air quality was incredibly poor in the home because of the high humidity levels. And the only ventilation device that actually vented from the house was the bathroom fan. The range hood was recirculating with indoors. And so the nose test, you walked up to the door and you could smell the home. So really this one was a matter of all of the above. It was removing, some of the source of the moisture issues that were occurring, and even addressing some minor mold issues. Fortunately, it hadn't gotten that far, but addressing the envelope and the air tightness, but really importantly was getting the proper ventilation system going in there as well. So yeah,
wasn't that nice?
Kind of all of the above.
Right. So in terms of remove, let's get rid of that water heater, direct vent, go to the direct vent sealed combustion. Let's remove some moisture sources. So maybe that's basement leaks or dehumidification. Then we talked about seal strategies, so general air tightness to get rid of some of those leakage spots where dust and mold and so on. And then you said ventilate, right? And just what was your ventilation strategy? What did you do to improve the ventilation in the house?
Well, first of all, putting in adequate equipment. So the bathroom fan that had been pre-existing was very old. So updating that to a much better new unit, adding in a venting range hood, and then actually encouraging and having an ERV installed as well, because the home actually really did need that.
And I love that. I like how you said that in that hierarchy, you know, the sort control. There's already a bathroom fan. There's some great new bathroom fan technology out there that you don't have to go in the attic to switch it. You can do it from below. Ask me how I know. My son and I did it in his own room, in his bathroom, without having to go into the ceiling. It's a retrofit product that you can do it all from below. And it only took us about 8 hours and 3 trips to the hardware store. So you guys will be able to do it in about 8 minutes. You know, that's me as an engineer. It just takes me that long. But it was very simple to get at least one good bathroom fan. And then that kitchen range is really important. I got to highlight that. A good quality kitchen range. And the only proviso would be, could it create negative pressure? But hey, we changed out the water heater. We don't have combustion spillages. The fact that you ultimately chose an ERV, that's great too. But I'm just going to give people confidence on this call. Every house needs the capacity for continuous mechanical ventilation. That literally could be as simple as one good quiet bathroom fan in an old house. It's not acceptable in a new house, or somebody needs more air than that, family members who are sick, but that's very useful, very useful. One of the things as we finish up, I just would say to you this. If you walk into an older home and people are wondering whether air quality is an issue for them or not, whether that's affecting their health, one great question we asked anybody in the family with asthma, allergies, respiratory problems, one of the questions we would follow up with is, have they determined yet that their house seems to have some impact? And it's really powerful when you ask that question, because people go, yeah, that's the weirdest thing. You know, I was away for 2 weeks in a hotel and I was feeling great. And you'd think hotels would be worse. And then I come back home and it was worse again. So that's a great supplementary question to ask. Do you feel better when away? I do this in offices. People would say, well, the air quality in this office is terrible. Okay, tell me about that. How do you feel at home? Well, I'm terrible at home too. Okay, but the office makes it worse. Okay, let's discuss that just a little bit more and see whether the office is indeed the problem or not. So are there any questions in our chat, Stefanie? Would we like to take a few questions?
We do have quite a few questions. So yeah, we got lots. So I'll start from the top here. What are the new air filters that claim to reduce viruses such as HEPA and MERV13 cost? And how much more energy do they use due to the pressure drop? And how do you suggest we monitor the indoor air quality in real time, especially in large buildings with automation?
Great. So yeah, it's a lot to unbundle there, but I can help with that. What's powerful to understand is ASHRAE, American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Engineers, who's kind of our technical voice, right? They're the folks in our industry. They would say COVID is best managed by proper ventilation and filtration. So you hear people talk about killing the virus and so on with plasma arc technology, electrostatic, blah, 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 ionization, UVC lights. ASHRAE would say in houses, the right technology is proper ventilation and filtration. And the two combined, I just did a dental clinic. They wanted 20 air changes per hour in the, oops, what happened? Are you okay there? What are you seeing?
I see a gray screen, but I can still hear you. So you can keep answering if you want.
I'll stop sharing, I guess.
There you go.
So they wanted 20 air changes. And what we wanted to show was that the combination of ventilation and filtration was 20 air changes. Now, we don't need that high in houses, but in terms of filtration, you do need to get to, in an individual room, you would want something that's in the HEPA range, MERV 14 to 16 at least, 14 to 16, is get you a reasonable percentage of removal of the virus. The virus is in the 0.1 to 0.2 micron size. So you need something that's good enough to get you down there. And true HEPA filter would get you there. But so really you're looking at that MERV 14 to MERV 16. And there's kind of two approaches to ventilation. And I think this is important to understand. If you have a sensitive person, let's say an elder in your household that you're really worried about contracting COVID, you would like to make their bedroom as clean as possible. Okay, let's put a HEPA filter in their room. I don't need a lot of air movement because I only have a 10 by 10 room. I only maybe need 30 or 40 cubic feet per minute of air at that really clean rate. Will give you a really good air change rate for that room. If I'm trying to HEPA filter the whole house, oh, geez. One, I need a really expensive HEPA system. Two, I'd have to imagine the virus that somebody expels in the dining room, for example, magically makes its way into the return, drives through the furnace, goes through the filter, comes out back to the supply vent, and goes over to Stefanie before I coughed it into her face, right? You will not really make a difference with central filtration on COVID. What you'd want, if you're doing filtration for COVID, it should be specific room ventilation, room filtration. That would be my advice. So smaller, room-based. There's some great products out there. I've been measuring them. They're all around 90% removal at 0.3 microns. Fairly common. CBC Marketplace, our good friend, and now I've forgotten his name. Sorry, Jeffrey Siegel. Yeah. Came to Bell Building Science Camp, and he did a really nice piece for Marketplace. Go look it up, talking about different brand names. But remember what he literally a MERV 14 filter stuck to the face of it and had that in a room. He said that's giving you as good a clean air delivery rate as the $800 devices. You don't have to get too fancy if you're doing individual room. Don't try to do the whole house, individual room. Sorry, that was a long answer to but so in terms of HEPA, a little room HEPA, electrical draw isn't that high. If you tried to put HEPA on a furnace, boy, you're talking really high static pressures. You would need a special furnace fan motor, and you indeed would be running very high wattage draw.
Okay, thank you, Gord. Some more questions that have come in are, we build homes that are fairly close to a cement plant. Do you have any insight into the outdoor air quality around a cement plant?
Yeah, this is a great question. That we hear this in the wildfire regions. What do I do? I don't have anything specific, but I will say this: every industrial facility had to hire somewhere along the road an industrial hygienist to do what I'll call point of border to make sure they're not impacting the air quality. And so you can, if you were really concerned, you would contact the safety officer at the cement plant and say, could I see your environmental study, please? And if they haven't done one, you can compel them to do one to say at the border of their property, what is the impact of that plant? Of course, you're going to say, well, regardless of what they're doing, I'm still building houses. So what are your strategies? And you know the strategy, right? Build the house really tight, build the house really, really, really tight. You guys know how to do that. The technology's there. Don't make me mention it. There's lots of technologies. And then put in controlled ventilation. In this case, you might want to put in an ERV or HRV that has a HEPA filter built right into it. I don't always recommend that, but a HEPA filter directly on the fresh air coming in if you have a concern. I was out in Kelowna 4 summers ago, I guess now, where they were having the wildfire issue. And I was saying to myself, boy, I wish I was back home in my R2000 house built in 92 that's under 1.5 air changes, that has an ERV, that has a HEPA filter on it. I would have been much better off because at least I can bring in small amounts of fresh air without those fine dust particles. So the solution is going to be the same regardless of what the concrete plant is putting out. You go ask the environmental officer, they will have one, safety and environmental officer, give me your readings at the borderline from an industrial hygienist, please.
Okay, thank you. Can you speak to adding hygroscopic materials like cork that help to regulate moisture?
It's an interesting one. There are products, drywall, for example, absorbs lots of moisture. Wood absorbs lots of moisture. It's why every summer my wife says, the door's sticking, you got to fix that. And I say, don't worry, Linda, I'll get to it. And by the fall, I've fixed it. It's no longer sticking, right? In other words, it absorbed moisture and then it gave off moisture. That becomes the issue with the hygroscopic materials. How much moisture can they collect? And when am I ever going to get rid of that moisture? So all winter, we get rid of moisture. All summer, we gain moisture, and are you okay with that? And what is its level of moisture capture? So generally speaking, unless you have what's called a regenerative system, well, maybe I can give you this. The first application of these kinds of products were when the Dutch were exporting or importing tulip bulbs from places afar. And the tulip bulbs in the bottom of the ships would rot out on transit, the 3-month transit in the wet, humid hulls. And what they would do is they would put in hydroscopic materials, corks and so on, and then periodically they would blow heat through and exhaust that moisture back out, because the cork would absorb as much as it could, and then they would have to regenerate. It's called regenerative dehumidification. So I don't know how good those technologies will be for you in a house unless you really knew the volume of the material that you had, surface area and so on, how much moisture and how long you'd like it to hold it for. So it's a little tough to do in a housing context.
Okay, thank you. What do you think about the interior window magnetic panels that offer zero leakage to older leaky windows? They are much less than the cost of a triple pane window, and it's recommended by Enercan as an option.
Again, Gail couldn't be on the call today, Gail Lawler, but she and I keep looking for that manufacturer, trying to find them, because we actually like that technology. I think that's a great, for those who can't afford to replace their windows, by all means. I can't remember the brand name. I don't know if they're still around, but I love that technology. I have no problem with that as getting that third pane. It's not as good as tearing out the whole window, because you still have the leakage around the frame and so on. But in terms of getting that third pane in there in a very cost-effective way, nothing wrong with that. The reason they need to be magnetic is you want them airtight, because you don't want warm moist air leaking past the first pane and still condensing in between. But that technology, I haven't seen it in a while, but I love it.
So a builder has said, we're building homes at under 1 air change at 50 pascals. With this tightness, we are increasingly concerned about range hoods running without makeup air units. Do you have any recommendations on a makeup air type system?
Yeah, in fact, that was the focus of the call today, the CSA F300 standard, the depressurization standard. What is reasonable? Okay, so first things first. If there's spillage susceptible appliances, wood stoves, wood fireplace, so on, chimneys, then you absolutely need to be worried about makeup air, and you're going to need it, period. You're going to need it. But what is a practical depressurization? And I can give you my own experience, and I've relayed that to the committee, and maybe it gets adopted. Other experts will look at it and decide. But here's what I would say. When a house goes more than about 25 pascals negative pressure, it starts to get annoying. The range hood starts to suck air and it can't find any air. My own range hood in my house goes, and my dryer goes, it just can't get any air, and it's not effective. So what you would do is have your energy rater, when they do the air tightness test, at that 1 air change at 25 pascals, ask them, how much air did it take to make a 25 pascal negative pressure? And if they say 400 CFM got you to 25, you'd say, okay, my range hood can be up to 400 CFM without makeup air. Use your blower door test. It's an easy thing to do. Every energy rater on this call, energy advisor on this call, should know how to do this. If they don't, I think it's page 18 on the blower door manual. I'm lying. I don't know what page it is, but go look it up. And you can determine from the blower door test how much air would cause more than a 25 pascal. That's not written in code anywhere. What I'm saying to you is it someday may be written in a standard, but it's a practical limit of where it gets annoying, because doors start to slam, range hoods don't work very well. 25 pascals is a pretty good number to choose and say, from that point on, I need makeup air.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit to passive house standards. So for passive house standards, you need to reduce penetrations. So they advise to recirculate kitchen exhaust and bathroom exhaust interconnected to your HRV. And so the question is, have you seen issues with this type of system?
And I appreciate that. Let's see if I can, again, I'll go back in my history, back in the early 80s, before passive house was around. And we would have said, vigilant. I would say I was a ventilation vigilante. No bathroom fans, no range hood. That's how I did my house in 92, in fact. And I would say I got reasonable performance, reasonable performance out of the HRV or ERV out of bathrooms. Now, I only had 2.5 bathrooms, but that gave me reasonable volume. What we find, of course, in the ensuing, 25 years, apparently now my son needs to shower for 23 minutes and he wants a multi-sprayed shower head and so on and so on. I'm kidding a little bit, but we see more demand, and maybe that capacity of bathrooms isn't good enough. So I'm okay with, generally speaking, ERV or HRV to do your bathroom exhaust. I'm of the belief these days that the kitchen range still needs a range hood. And I listened to a fellow by the name of Dr. David Miller at CMHC. He was Agriculture Canada, Health Canada, CMHC, who said, you want to do 3 things to improve air quality in your houses. 1, vent your range hood. 2, manage moisture levels. 3, clean your floors. Now, clean floors had a whole bunch of implications to it, not carpets, so on and so on. But those were, and first on the list was vent the range hood. The range hood has a lot of pollutants, depending on cooking styles. So I would say I'd want you to vent the range hood, or if you're not going to vent the range hood, put in an HRV or ERV in that passive house that can get you over 100 CFM of air near the range. Now, so here's the thought. If I want more air out of a bathroom than an HRV will get me, could I put in a bathroom fan in the supplement? And the answer is sure. Could I put the bathroom fan in line with the HRV vent? I've seen this for years. Hook up the bathroom fan to the HRV, and you'll find that's not suitable. The 2 fans tend to fight each other. You get very little incremental value, so don't do that. So put a separate exhaust fan, that's fine. Or there is a technology, our good friend David Hill and Already out in BC has this really cool, I'll call it zoned ventilation system. The grill opens and closes based on what's happening in that bathroom. So you open the grill, free air means more air will go through that grill when that bathroom is being used. It's called the Posh Grill, I believe it's called, and Already products. It is sold in other parts of Canada. He has some requirements on it to make sure their ducts are sealed. And you could do zoning off the HRV already. There's manufacturers who could piece that together for you. And you're going to see other manufacturers come with those same sorts of technology. So in general, try not to put in bathroom fans. Find other ways to mitigate. Bigger bathrooms may mean exhaust fan or these Posh timers, Posh grills. But I'm going to say, I'm converted. I would say you want a range hood. And then you're going to need makeup air.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Okay, so here's another one.
Probably last one, maybe.
Yeah, we're running out of time and we still have questions. So, Gord, have you had any exposure or experience with new generation air purifiers? The concern I have is they can create secondary toxins as a byproduct through oxidation by playing with chemistry versus mechanical intervention.
I lost that last part. Say the last part again.
So
secondary byproducts?
Secondary byproducts through oxidation by playing with chemistry versus mechanical intervention.
Yes, thank you. And I'll go right back to ASHRAE. ASHRAE would say ventilation and media filtration, not plasma, not ionization, not UV lights. And they're not saying they don't work. They're just saying there's no independent studies that say they work. And this gets, I'll get a dozen texts and emails off of this, just that statement. Well, I have this one, it's really great. Great. Show me the independent peer-reviewed study. That's what ASHRAE says. I can't find them. I hear people say, yeah, I put one in my own house. My buddy put one in. It was all great. Wonderful. Show ASHRAE. Don't show me. Show ASHRAE, the independent peer-reviewed study. What they would say is, if you want to use those technology, hire a very specific engineer for a very specific application. Should UVC be used in hospitals? Absolutely. Proper engineering and so on. In houses, let's not be doing that. Ventilation, filtration. On that list of 4 items, if I can summarize, remove, seal, ventilate, filter. Notice what's not on the list. UV, ionization, bionization, tea tree oil. None of those are on the list. And this list was developed jointly by EPA, and I shouldn't say jointly. Each independently would say the same thing. Remove, seal, ventilate, filter. All of the other stuff, use at your peril. Spend your time and effort on those 4 elements. That's where you'd be most effective.
Well, we still have a few more questions, but did you want to tackle just one more before we hang up? Or
I always hate to take extra people's time because I talk too much, but go ahead, give us one more.
Okay, so I told this person I would ask the question. Where do you get the whole house dehumidifier?
Ah, well, a number of manufacturers have it. I have my own personal opinion as to who that is. You guys will know I have a little bit of vested interest in some products and categories, but I would say to you, major manufacturers, Honeywell and now Residio, Aprilaire has one, company called Thermistor or Santa Fe, my opinion, happens to be the best. They have a cool little one that fits in a wall cavity. So your HVAC contractor should have access. Here's the problem. We haven't been selling them very much in Canada, so you may have to wait to get them. I have some stock here just because I have them here, but you don't need to come to me for that. But so there's a few brand names for you. It might be of interest for you to know that Broan and Thermistor are owned by the same company. You're going to see some new developments coming there, but you should be able to get one of these through your HVAC wholesale distributors.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Gord. It was a pleasure to do this webinar together with you today. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on this. It's such an important topic, as you had outlined. So we want to thank Enbridge as well for sponsoring this. And the next session is in the middle of October, and it's going to be Andy. And he is going to be speaking about, I just had it in my head and now it's gone. He is going to be speaking about air tightness. That's what it is. And do we need to know the ACH? So that will be a really good segment that is another very important topic, quite tied to what we talked about today. So thank you, everyone. Like I said, this has been recorded. And when I close the session out, a little survey link will pop up. If you could just fill that survey in for us and give us some your feedback on what you thought of the session, that'd be very helpful. And I will send the resource email out with the slides and the video link tomorrow when it's ready. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Enjoy your day.
For your experience. Yeah, I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Gord. Bye.